On our anniversary, my wife revealed she's pregnant by another man, forcing my choice to stay. Our 7th wedding anniversary was supposed to be special. I had made reservations at the fancy Italian place downtown, the one we'd always talked about going to but never did. It was a night to celebrate us, to reminisce about the years we'd spent together and dream about the future. Or so I thought. Emily had been quieter than usual throughout the evening. At first, I didn't think much of it, maybe she was just tired from work or caught up in her own thoughts. But as the night wore on, her silence became harder to ignore. I asked if everything was okay, and she just smiled, saying she had something important to tell me later. By the time we were halfway through dessert, my nerves were shot. I could feel it in my gut, something was off. Emily kept fiddling with her wedding ring, her eyes darting around the restaurant, avoiding mine. I thought maybe she was upset about something at work or worried about our finances, but I never could have guessed what she was about to say. When the waiter brought the check, she finally spoke. "Jason," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "There's something I need to tell you." I put down my fork and leaned in, my heart pounding in my chest. "What is it, Em? You're scaring me." She took a deep breath, her hands shaking as she clasped them together on the table. "I'm pregnant." At first, I didn't know what to say. The news hit me like a wave. Pregnant? We hadn't been planning to have kids just yet, but the idea of starting a family didn't seem so crazy. In fact, for a split second, I felt a surge of joy. But then I saw her face, pale, tense, filled with dread. "Pregnant?" I repeated, my voice thick with confusion. That's amazing. Why do you look so upset?" She looked down, unable to meet my eyes. "Jason, it's not yours." Those 4 words hit me like a freight train. My brain couldn't process them at first. "What do you mean it's not mine?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Emily bit her lip, her eyes filling with tears. "I've been seeing someone else. I didn't mean for it to happen, but I'm pregnant, and it's his." The room spun around me. My stomach dropped as if I'd just been punched. My mind raced, trying to piece together the last few months, searching for signs I'd missed. How could I have been so blind? "Someone else?" I repeated, my voice cracking. "You've been having an affair?" She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I'm so sorry, Jason. I never meant to hurt you." I couldn't speak. My throat was tight, my hands trembling as I gripped the edge of the table. The whole world felt like it was crumbling around me, the life I thought we had built together suddenly a lie. "How long?" I finally managed to ask, my voice raw with emotion. 6 months, she whispered, barely able to get the words out. 6 months. Half a year of deception. Half a year of lying to my face, pretending everything was fine. I felt sick. The betrayal, the pain, it was too much to bear. "Who is he?" I demanded, my anger bubbling to the surface. "Who is this guy?" Emily shook her head, wiping away her tears. "It doesn't matter, Jason. What matters is that I'm pregnant, and I need to figure out what to do." "What to do?" I laughed bitterly, the sound hollow and broken. "You've already made your choices, Emily. You chose him. You chose this." She looked up at me, her face crumpling with guilt and sorrow. "I never meant for it to go this far. I still love you, Jason. I made a terrible mistake." I stood up from the table, my legs shaky as I tried to steady myself. "A mistake?" I spat, my voice filled with rage. "You call this a mistake? You've been lying to me for months, and now you're pregnant with another man's child." The restaurant felt like it was closing in on me, the sound of clinking glasses and soft music turning into a distant hum. I couldn't breathe. I needed to get out, away from the place where my life had just shattered. "I can't do this right now," I muttered, grabbing my coat. "I need to think." Emily stood up, reaching for my arm. "Please, Jason. Don't leave like this. We need to talk." "Talk?" I yanked my arm away, my anger boiling over. "There's nothing left to talk about. You've destroyed everything." I stormed out of the restaurant, the cool night air hitting my face like a slap. I could still hear her calling after me, but I didn't look back. I couldn't. My mind was racing, my heart pounding in my chest as I tried to process what had just happened. Our anniversary. The night that was supposed to be about love, about us. And now it was ruined, tainted by her betrayal, her secret. I walked for what felt like hours, my thoughts spiraling. How could she do this to me? To us? I thought we were happy. I thought we had a future. But now everything felt like a lie. I wasn't sure what I was going to do next. All I knew was that my life had just changed forever, and nothing would ever be the same again. The walk home was a blur, my mind trapped in a storm of rage, disbelief, and devastation. By the time I reached our front door, I felt hollow, numb from the shock of what Emily had just told me. Pregnant. With someone else's child. How do you even begin to process something like that? I didn't even know what to do when I stepped inside. Everything looked exactly the same, but nothing felt right anymore. The framed pictures of us on the walls, the cozy furniture we'd picked out together, all of it seemed like a sick joke now. How had I been so blind? How had I missed all the signs? I sank onto the couch, my head in my hands. I didn't know how long I sat there, staring blankly at the floor, my thoughts racing in circles. My phone buzzed a few times, Emily, no doubt, trying to get in touch with me. I couldn't bring myself to answer. What was there to say? After what felt like hours, I finally forced myself to move. I needed to do something, anything, to distract myself from the pain that was gnawing at me. I grabbed a bottle of whiskey from the kitchen and poured myself a glass. The burn of the alcohol was sharp, but it dulled the edges of my emotions, just enough for me to think straight. I couldn't stay here. Not in this house. Not surrounded by the reminders of our life together, the life that had just been ripped apart. I needed space, time to figure out what the hell I was going to do. Without even packing a bag, I grabbed my keys and left. I had no destination in mind, but I found myself heading to my sister Sarah's house. She had always been my rock, the one person I could count on when things went south. If anyone could help me make sense of this mess, it was her. By the time I pulled into her driveway, it was late. I wasn't even sure if she'd be awake, but I didn't care. I knocked on the door, and after a few moments, Sarah appeared, looking groggy but concerned when she saw me standing there. "Jason? What's going on?" she asked, stepping aside to let me in. I didn't know where to start. I just collapsed onto her couch, my head still spinning. "Emily, she's pregnant," I muttered. Sarah's face softened, a smile starting to form. "That's amazing news, isn't it?" I shook my head, cutting her off. "It's not mine." The smile disappeared from her face, replaced by shock. "What do you mean it's not yours?" "She's been having an affair," I said, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. "For 6 months. She's pregnant with his kid." Sarah sat down beside me, her hand on my shoulder. "Oh my God, Jason. I'm so sorry." I didn't say anything for a while, just staring at the floor, trying to keep my emotions in check. How could she do this to me? I don't understand. "I don't either," Sarah said softly. "But you don't have to figure this out right now. You need time to process it." "I don't even know where to start," I admitted. "I thought we were happy. I didn't see this coming at all." "Have you talked to her? I mean, really talked?" Sarah asked, her voice gentle but firm. I shook my head. "Not really. She tried, but I walked out. I couldn't handle it." Sarah sighed. "I get that. But at some point, you're going to have to face her. You deserve answers, Jason." "I don't know if I want answers," I said bitterly. "What good will it do?" She made her choice. Sarah gave me a sympathetic look. "I can't imagine how hard this is for you, but you have to take care of yourself first. Don't make any rash decisions right now. Just take some time to think things through." I nodded, though I wasn't sure what thinking things through would even look like. My entire world had just been turned upside down. How do you rebuild from something like that? Sarah offered me her guest room, and I gratefully accepted. I wasn't ready to go back home, not to the house that now felt tainted by betrayal. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, replaying the night's events over and over in my mind. The next morning, after a restless few hours of sleep, I finally checked my phone. There were multiple missed calls and texts from Emily, all saying the same thing: "Please, Jason, we need to talk." I wasn't ready to talk to her, but I knew Sarah was right. I couldn't avoid this forever. At some point, I had to face Emily and get the answers I needed. But not yet. I spent the next few days at Sarah's place, trying to make sense of everything. I couldn't focus on anything for more than a few minutes at a time, my mind constantly drifting back to that night in the restaurant. Every time I thought about Emily's confession, it felt like a knife twisting deeper into my chest. I couldn't stop wondering about the man she'd been seeing. Who was he? How had it started? Was he someone I knew? Did she love him? All these questions swirled around in my head, but I wasn't sure if I even wanted to know the answers. Knowing the details wouldn't make the betrayal any less painful. Eventually, I knew I had to face her. I couldn't stay in limbo forever, hiding out at Sarah's house and avoiding the reality of my situation. I needed closure, or at least some kind of direction for what to do next. I texted Emily, agreeing to meet. We set a time to talk, and as the day approached, I felt a mix of dread and determination. I had no idea what I was going to say, but I knew I needed to hear her out, no matter how much it hurt. The cafe we chose for the meeting was neutral ground, a place where we'd had countless lunches and coffee dates over the years. But today, it felt foreign. I arrived early, sitting by the window and staring blankly at the bustling street outside. My heart raced as I waited for Emily to arrive, my mind spinning with all the things I wanted to say but didn't know how to. The door jingled, and I saw her step inside. She looked nervous, her eyes scanning the room before they landed on me. There was an awkward hesitation in her step, as if she didn't know if she should approach. I could tell she was struggling with the weight of what had happened, but that didn't make me feel any better. She sat down across from me, her hands twisting in her lap. For a few moments, neither of us spoke. The tension between us was palpable, and I could sense her trying to find the right words. "Jason," she started softly, her voice breaking the silence. "Thank you for agreeing to meet me." I didn't respond right away. I wasn't here for pleasantries. I was here for answers. "We need to talk, Emily. About everything." She nodded, her eyes dropping to the table. "I know. I owe you the truth." The truth. I wasn't sure I could handle it, but I had to hear it. The betrayal was already real, but understanding why it happened was a whole different kind of pain. "Who is he?" I asked, my voice cold. "I need to know who this guy is." Emily hesitated, biting her lip before finally speaking. "His name is David. He's someone I met at work." My heart clenched at the sound of his name, and I fought to keep my composure. David. A stranger, a faceless man who had shattered my marriage. "How long have you been seeing him?" I asked, my voice tight. 6 months, she whispered, her eyes glistening with tears. It wasn't supposed to be anything serious. I didn't mean for it to happen. 6 months, I repeated, the number feeling like a punch to the gut. "You've been lying to me for half a year." "I'm so sorry, Jason," she said, her voice trembling. "I never wanted to hurt you." I clenched my fists under the table, trying to keep my anger in check. "Why?" I demanded. "Why did you do this? Were you unhappy with me? Was our marriage not enough?" She wiped at her eyes, clearly struggling to explain. "It wasn't about you, Jason. I swear, it wasn't. I was feeling lost. We've been together for so long, and she paused, searching for the right words. "I don't know. I made a horrible mistake. I let my emotions take over, and I started something I couldn't stop." I stared at her, my mind racing. "So, what? You were bored? You just wanted to try something new?" "No," she said quickly. "It wasn't like that. I was confused. I wasn't thinking clearly. David gave me attention, and I let myself believe it meant something. And now you're pregnant with his child," I said, my voice flat, the enormity of the situation still hard to comprehend. She looked down again, her hands trembling. "Yes." The word hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I felt my heart twist, the realization hitting me all over again. This wasn't just about an affair. This was about a child that wasn't mine. "Do you love him?" I asked, the question burning in my throat. I wasn't sure if I could handle the answer, but I needed to know. Emily's eyes shot up, wide with shock. "No," she said firmly. "I don't love him, Jason. I never did. It was never about love. It was a mistake, a terrible, terrible mistake." I let out a bitter laugh. "A mistake? You call this a mistake? You've been seeing this guy for 6 months, and now you're having his baby. That's not a mistake, Emily. That's a choice." She winced at my words, but I didn't care. I needed her to feel the weight of what she'd done. "I know," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I know I've hurt you. I know I've ruined everything. But I still love you, Jason. I never stopped loving you." Her words made me pause. Love? How could she claim to love me after everything she'd done? But then again, emotions weren't so black and white. People could love and hurt each other at the same time. The question was, could I still love her? "I don't know if I can forgive you, Emily," I said finally, my voice cracking. "I don't know if I can get past this." Tears streamed down her face, but she nodded, accepting the reality of my words. "I understand. And I won't blame you if you can't. But I want you to know that I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right, to try and fix what I've broken." I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of her confession pressing down on me. Part of me wanted to get up and walk away, to leave her with the wreckage she had created. But another part of me, God help me, still loved her. Even after everything, there was a part of me that didn't want to let go. "I don't know if we can fix this," I said quietly. "I don't even know where to start." "We could try counseling," she suggested, her voice hopeful. "We could talk to someone, try to work through this." I didn't respond right away. Counseling. Therapy. Was it even possible to come back from something like this? Could any amount of talking heal the wound she'd inflicted? "I need time," I said finally. "I can't make any decisions right now." Emily nodded, wiping away her tears. "I understand. Take all the time you need." We sat in silence for a few more minutes, the weight of everything we hadn't said hanging between us. I didn't know what the future held, but one thing was clear, nothing would ever be the same. As I left the cafe, my thoughts swirled in a chaotic mess. I didn't know if I could forgive her, if I could ever look at her the same way again. But one thing was certain, I was at a crossroads, and whichever path I chose, there was no going back. The days following our meeting in the cafe were some of the hardest of my life. Every minute felt heavy, like I was walking around with an unbearable weight on my chest. I couldn't think straight. I couldn't sleep. The image of Emily sitting across from me, tearful and regretful, replayed over and over in my mind. I kept hearing her say, "I still love you," and I kept wondering how someone could claim to love you while betraying you so deeply. I stayed at Sarah's house for a while. She didn't push me to talk, which I appreciated, but I could tell she was worried. She would check on me every now and then, bringing me food, making sure I wasn't just drinking my pain away. I tried to act normal around her, but we both knew that my world had fallen apart. One evening, about a week after the cafe meeting, Sarah sat down next to me on the couch. "Jason," she said softly, "I know you're going through hell right now, but you need to think about what you want to do next." "I don't even know what that looks like," I muttered, running a hand through my hair. "How do you move forward from something like this?" She nodded, understanding. "You don't have to figure everything out right now. But you do have to start making decisions for yourself, whether that's moving on without her or trying to rebuild." I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. I knew she was right. I couldn't stay in this limbo forever, stuck between anger and heartbreak. I had to face reality, even if I wasn't sure what that meant. "Do you think people can really come back from something like this?" I asked, genuinely curious. Sarah was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "I think it depends on the people. Some couples work through infidelity and come out stronger. But it takes a lot of work, and both people have to be fully committed to healing. It's not easy, and it's not for everyone." I nodded, letting her words sink in. I wasn't sure if I was one of those people. The thought of moving on without Emily, of building a new life, felt terrifying. But staying with her after everything she'd done? That seemed just as impossible. "I don't even know if I want to try," I admitted. "Every time I think about her, I just feel betrayed. Angry. Like I'm not enough." Sarah reached over and squeezed my hand. "You are enough, Jason. Don't let her actions make you doubt that. What she did was about her, not you." I wanted to believe her, but the doubt lingered. Emily's affair had shaken me to my core, making me question everything about myself and our relationship. How could I ever trust her again? How could I ever look at her the same way? As the days passed, I started to think more about what Sarah had said. I knew I had to make a choice, and soon. I couldn't stay in this state of uncertainty forever. But every time I thought about reaching out to Emily, the fear of what lay ahead held me back. One evening, while I was sitting alone in Sarah's living room, my phone buzzed. It was Emily. A simple text, "Can we talk?" I stared at the screen for what felt like forever. Part of me wanted to ignore her, to continue keeping her at arm's length. But another part of me knew that I couldn't avoid this forever. I needed answers, closure, something to help me move forward, whether that meant with or without her. After what felt like an eternity, I replied, "Okay. Let's talk." We agreed to meet the next day at the house. Our house. The place that had once felt like a home, but now felt like a reminder of everything that had been lost. The next morning, I drove there with a knot in my stomach. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw Emily's car parked out front. My heart pounded in my chest as I approached the front door, and when I stepped inside, I found her sitting on the couch, just like I had been a week ago when the world had come crashing down around me. She looked up as I walked in, her eyes tired and swollen from crying. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. I didn't respond. I sat down in the armchair across from her, putting as much distance between us as I could. The silence between us was thick, neither of us knowing where to start. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said," I began, my voice strained. "And I need to know why. Why did you do it, Emily?" She took a deep breath, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I wish I had a better answer for you, Jason. I wish I could say there was a clear reason. But there isn't." I was confused. I let myself get swept up in something that I thought would fill a void inside me. But it didn't. It only made everything worse. Her words didn't give me the clarity I was hoping for. If anything, they made things more complicated. She had been searching for something, but she didn't even know what. How was I supposed to make sense of that? "Do you regret it?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Tears welled up in her eyes as she nodded. "More than anything. I would give anything to take it back, Jason. I hate myself for what I've done to you, to us." I swallowed hard, trying to keep my emotions in check. "And now you're pregnant," I said, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. Emily looked down at her stomach, her hand unconsciously resting there. "Yes. And I know that changes everything." "It does," I said, the weight of those words pressing down on me. "We can't just pretend like this didn't happen, Emily. There's no going back to the way things were. She nodded, her tears falling freely now. I know. But I don't want to lose you, Jason. I love you. I've always loved you. I stared at her, feeling a mixture of anger and sorrow. How can you say that, Emily? How can you love me and do something like this? I don't have an excuse, she said through her tears. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I'm asking for it anyway. I'm begging you to give us a chance to make this right. Her words hung in the air, heavy with desperation. I wanted to scream, to tell her that she had destroyed everything, that there was no making this right. But the truth was, I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know if I had it in me to walk away completely. I need time, I said finally, my voice shaking. I need to figure out if I can live with this. Emily nodded, wiping her tears. I understand. Take as much time as you need. As I stood up to leave, I felt the weight of the decision I had to make pressing down on me. Could I forgive her? Could I stay with her knowing what she had done? Or was this the end of our story? I didn't have the answers yet. But I knew one thing for certain, whichever path I chose, it would change my life forever. Weeks passed after that conversation, each one feeling like a blur. I threw myself into work, trying to distract myself from the storm of emotions I was feeling. But no matter how hard I tried to focus, the thoughts of Emily and her betrayal were always lurking in the back of my mind. The weight of the decision I had to make was like a constant pressure on my chest. Friends reached out, some offering support, others trying to give advice, but none of it helped. Every choice felt wrong. I couldn't shake the feeling of anger and betrayal, but there was also a deep sadness, knowing that this was the woman I had once loved with all my heart, the woman I had planned to spend the rest of my life with. Sarah, always my voice of reason, finally sat me down one evening. Jason, she said, her tone soft but firm, you can't keep running from this. I know it's hard, but you need to make a decision. Whether it's staying with Emily or moving on without her, you can't keep living in this limbo. I knew she was right. I couldn't keep pretending everything was on pause. I had to face the reality of my situation. The next morning, I drove back to our house. The house where I had once felt so secure, so certain of the future. Now it felt like a battlefield, a place where every room held memories of a life I wasn't sure existed anymore. When I walked through the front door, I found Emily sitting in the kitchen, a cup of coffee in front of her. She looked up at me, her eyes tired but hopeful. Hey, she said softly, her voice tentative. Hey, I replied, my own voice strained. I sat down across from her, the weight of the moment settling over us. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I tried to gather my thoughts. I knew what I had come here to do, but saying the words out loud felt impossible. Emily, I began, taking a deep breath, I've been thinking a lot about everything, about us, about what happened. She nodded, her eyes fixed on me, waiting. I've gone back and forth 100 times in my head, I continued. There's a part of me that wants to try and forgive you, to see if we can somehow rebuild what we had. But there's also a part of me that feels like too much has been broken. Like no matter how hard we try, we'll never be able to get back to the way things were. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she stayed silent, letting me finish. I don't know if I can live with what happened, I said, my voice shaking. I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again. And with the baby? It's not just about us anymore. It's about a whole new life, and I don't know if I can handle that. Emily wiped at her tears, her voice trembling as she spoke. I understand. I know I've hurt you in ways I can't ever take back. And if you need to walk away, I won't stop you. But I still love you, Jason. I want to fight for us, even if it seems impossible. Her words hit me hard. I wanted to believe her, to believe that love could fix everything. But deep down, I knew the truth. Love wasn't enough this time. Trust had been shattered, and it wasn't something I could simply will back into existence. I love you too, Emily, I admitted, the words feeling bittersweet. But I don't think love is enough anymore. I don't think we can come back from this. She closed her eyes, tears spilling down her cheeks, but she didn't argue. She knew it too. We both did. For a long time, we sat there in silence, the reality of the situation sinking in. This was it. This was the end of us. I'll move out, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. I'll give you the house. You'll need it for the baby. Emily nodded, her hands trembling as she wiped at her tears. Thank you, she whispered. For everything. I stood up, feeling the finality of the moment. There were no more words to be said. No more apologies, no more promises. This was the end of our story. As I walked out of the house for the last time, I felt a strange sense of relief. The decision had been made. The weight I had been carrying for weeks had lifted, even if it left behind an empty space. Life wasn't going to be the same. I knew that. But maybe, just maybe, I could start to rebuild. A new life, without Emily, without the lies and the betrayal. It wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. I got into my car and drove away, not knowing what the future held. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid of it. I had made my choice. And whatever came next, I would face it head on.